Toby,
Hello again, Joe.
episode 3.
Episode 3.
Episode 3. We are here today, Toby, to talk about us, talk about Placeable, talk a little bit about our clients,
Yeah.
our candidates, the Founder Project, which we'll come on to at the end, the pioneering new employment scheme around creating business owners. Very exciting stuff. This is a little bit of a weird way to do it, which we've told a few people, haven't we, that we're going to be kind of recording a vodcast thing to talk about ourselves and not have a guest. And I think it's important, we're doing this because we want to see we want people to see the people actually behind the brand.
Yeah, agreed.
What you see on a website, on
It's
marketing
not,
campaigns.
we want an organic version of ourselves and not a kind of, classic promotional video.
Yeah, and we're going to open up our process. We're going to tell everyone if you continue to listen. Without doubt, there will be millions and millions of people fascinated by what we're discussing. But we're going to open up our process, the things that we've learned in our first year running a business, which hopefully some people, whether that's internal talent teams or other recruitment agencies, can learn from. But mainly, we want people to get to know us as people, the way we communicate, that kind of stuff. So I think a good place to start is why we started Placeable. What was the reason that we got going?
Yeah, it's the right place to start. And obviously we had totally separate reasons that became somewhat intertwined, didn't we? I think for me, it was having been in recruitment for 3 years and seen it run how it was in that environment, which was definitely not bad. It was good, but I felt like there were tweaks that could be made to improve the process, and it was small things that made a big difference. Alongside the fact that there really wasn't anything outside of the kind of the financial setup and whatnot that I didn't feel like I was capable of doing.
Yeah, I think when you look at the recruitment market as a whole, it does have that stigma about it. It's in that same bracket as car salespeople or estate agents and so on. And whilst that was a deterrent for me initially, on my first post when we released Placeable, I did that Google search, recruiters are.
Yeah.
Recruiters are bad.
Yeah.
Recruiters are not your friend.
Not your friend is the best one,
was my
wasn't it?
favourite.
Yeah.
And I think whilst that is, of course, a negative thing about the industry, it also presents a massive opportunity to omit the right behaviour. So I think for me, whilst recruitment was did not expect to start a recruitment business, it was a really good opportunity. And now we're a year in, I think that decision's been vindicated.
Agreed. I also think when you if you're starting any business, you've generally got a couple of choices. You can either create something brand new, or you can go into a historic traditional industry and try and do it better than the rest.
And we started when we were just coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
So
August 2021.
August 20. Yeah, exactly. Which, in hindsight, was an absolutely brilliant time to start when you look at what the market for recruitment was at that time. How did you find that initial kind of process of starting, maybe implementing a different strategy to what you were doing previously?
Well, I think I was lucky in that in the whole setup of the business, it fell in your lap, right? I was kicking back and chilling out at the time.
I remember.
And I was thinking, I hope he's done this right and we're not going to have HMRC breathing down our neck. But no, when we started, there were some small tweaks we made. And I think they've been built over the last year, haven't they? But it was an honest approach we had to recruitment. We didn't pretend we were something we weren't. We were new. We admitted that. And it was a fairly smooth start, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was because you had that recruitment background, because you had done it for 4 years, and I'm going to call you an expert in inverted commas here, but as a recruitment expert, and me coming in from a sales background, which was very much a strategic pursuit type of sell. So a deal cycle would last 9 months, a year.
Yeah.
The combination when we first started discussing this around could you put that sniper type approach on a recruitment model and it work? I think at the start we were pleasantly surprised, weren't we, that it seemed to work. But mainly the thing that guided that throughout was behaviour. And that was the thing that certainly when I looked at recruiters or the recruitment industry, not everyone, but probably I think it's fair to say majority, I looked at it like they were emitting the wrong behaviours. It was one of distrust, a little bit slimy. Just simply by doing the right thing, even if it wasn't the easy thing to do, got us off to a flying start.
Agreed. And I think, the problem and the trap that a lot of people fall into in recruitment is there can be a lot of pressure on you, and, it's a highly targeted job. It's very KPI led, be that on the number of messages you send out, or the number of calls that you have, or the number of submissions that you have, or the number of interviews that are booked and first, second round. And it can be, people can be micromanaged. And I think there's pressure on people to hit those numbers, and that's what results and leads to those bad behaviours.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at just the way that most recruitment contracts are set up, if you look at contingent recruitment, so if anyone isn't aware, that means you get paid a percentage of the salary of the person you place. Therefore, if you don't place them, you have no fee.
No win, no fee.
No win, no fee. So essentially, I think for certain people, certain companies that don't foster necessary, I don't want to say the wrong, that sounds wrong, but it's easy for people to slip into a pattern of, if you're not going to generate me a fee, I'm going to forget about you. When in fact, who knows what that relationship could blossom into in 3 months, 6 months, years, 2 years' time.
It's really transactional.
Yeah.
And I think people don't appreciate the value of long-term relationships in recruitment, because candidates are sometimes seen as, commodities, right?
Pounds on top of their heads.
Yeah, correct.
Which is understandable, I think, if you're not pushed to behave in the right way, right? It was the number one priority for us at the start was, yes, we want to make money, we want to survive as a business, but we want to do it the right way.
And I think it's that kind of the mindset that you naturally adopt as a founder, is you care so much that your reputation's on the line big time. So honesty was just a complete non-negotiable anyway.
And it wasn't, oddly, that it wasn't a tough decision to do that, was it? When there was baddies, when there wasn't the kind of news we wanted to discuss, would be that a client or a candidate, we were more than happy to do it, because we knew if we had that honest approach, that in the long term it would reward us, which happy to say it has. And I think if we move on to, if we look at the market that we're in at the moment in recruitment, obviously it's been pretty crazy from, I wasn't on it at the time. Maybe you could initially go into how the market's changed from pre-COVID to what we're in now.
Yeah, I think when I first started working in recruitment, it was a client-led market, and this would have been maybe 2018 kind of time. But it was very much client-led, meaning clients had a lot of choice, and it's completely switched since COVID. Candidates are now the ones with the power, and clients are really fighting for the talent, which is a really interesting dynamic. But I think we're seeing a small shift back to more of an equal market, shall we say?
Because salaries just started ballooning, right?
Oh yeah, it's been crazy. There's been people who I spoke to a year ago who've gone from a £50,000 basic to over £100,000 in a year.
Yeah. I suppose when that's happening, it's very hard for some companies to actually be competitive within the recruitment market, because they just can't get to those salary levels, right?
Correct. There's so much, and there's been so much investment, right? With London being the financial capital of the world, fintech capital of the world, it all blew up, and it was that natural. When it all blows up, it's going to simmer down at some point, and I think we're kind of in that with the layoffs that are happening recently. It's still a strong market, and it's still, I'd say, a candidate-led market, but there's definitely those tremors of uncertainty coming in.
I think the pending recession, might not happen, might happen, whatever. The fears associated with that, you are seeing lots of layoffs at the moment, and of course that delivers fear to a lot of candidates. And I agree with you. I think you're starting to see that curve start to plateau a little bit and go back into the favour of the clients, which, of course, for those that aren't offering as big salary levels, is a big plus. Talking of that, and obviously we work with a number of the clients, and starting to kind of opening up, I suppose, our process and telling people kind of what we do. we have that mantra, that input equals output mantra. Can you kind of talk through what that actually means in terms of how it impacts the start and end of our delivery process?
Yeah, it's a really good point to raise. I think it's all about the brief, to keep it really simple. The information that is gathered up front about what a client is looking for is so essential in us understanding the likelihood of placing, but more importantly, saving time for everyone in the process, ourselves, the candidates, and obviously the clients in a massive way. And that goes for understanding every single little detail. And this is across a few different areas. So firstly, I think it's crucial because we're representing a business in the market. And so we have to know, or be as close as knowing, as much about that business as they do themselves, which is obviously never possible, but you try and really get as close as you possibly can with what we can do. Secondly, it's about understanding who's going to work in their business and who do they want, and how can we ask the right questions to gather the right information to be able to then go out to market to find the right person. And I think the more detail you gain up front and the bigger investment there is from the client and seeing the value in this, the more likely it is that we're going to be putting people in front of them who are as close to the best fit as possible.
Exactly. I think it comes back to that, what's plan A versus what's plan B. It's very easy, and something that was very noticeable when we first started was we might take a brief that was half an hour or 45 minutes. And what that meant was there were lots of gaps. We might not have known there were gaps at the time, to be fair, a little bit of naivety, but there was definitely gaps in information that, had we known, you would have started the entire process in terms of search completely differently. And I almost kind of use the analogy, if you don't have all the blanks filled out and you have a complete set of knowledge, you essentially are going with plan B.
Yeah.
You are opening up a much broader spectrum of potential people that can be applicable and not going with your most targeted. When we look through the numbers, I think it was after about 6 months, the jobs where we'd had a much clearer brief were saving something like 5 times the amount of the hiring manager's time on interviewing the relevant candidates. It might be less volume, but the relevant candidates versus the ones where we had a relatively sloppy brief and didn't have the information to do that job effectively.
Correct. And I think it's about, and I'll steal this kind of phrase from you, but it's about working off of logic and not hope. Yeah. Especially when, some clients, they're not always sure what they actually want. And I think our job is to be able to assess the black and white up front. So we know that when we look at someone's profile, we can assess based on the quality gates that we find, are they going to be applicable? If yes, great. Now, if we speak to that person, we're then going to have to qualify the grey, right? Because it's no good judging someone on a LinkedIn profile. It's completely unfair. We need to assess the grey. And if we don't really know what we're looking for because we've taken a fairly short brief, for example, and we've not gone into that granular detail, then we might go, oh, they look quite good based on sort of the small information that we've gathered, and let's put them forwards. Now, imagine extrapolating that over multiple roles in multiple businesses with multiple hiring managers and doing that consistently. You're looking at hours and hours and hours and days and days and days of people's time being wasted speaking to people who actually could have been qualified out at the beginning had we spent or invested just an extra hour taking a really detailed brief. And I think and that's why, we work really well with our clients, because I think they understand and value that we're not asking questions for the sake of asking questions. We're asking questions so that we can get to the end result quicker. But throughout that partnership, we're also going to save you a lot of time.
And that's been a noticeable change, I think, from when we started, how much emphasis we do put on that brief. And I think the lesson for anyone listening is spend more time up front. It makes a huge difference. I think we've cut something like 60-70% of time spent working on jobs just by almost doubling, tripling the amount of time we spend up front. Of course, that leads into the next part, the actual delivery. But post that brief, when you start to go to the market, you start to search. We spoke at the very start of the business, there's machine gun and then there's sniper. Where do you think that leading indicators, having clear metrics to work off when you go into delivery, comes into being effective?
I think it is at the core of the entire delivery process, right? If you've taken the right brief and you know what you're looking for, and you can answer every question that you can possibly think about in terms of why they're looking for that person, what they need to have in terms of skills and experience and whatnot, then you can go to market. And when you're going to market, my mindset personally is, I want to find as many people who look applicable based on paper, and I want to have as many conversations as possible. So you've got to try and find as many people within the bounds of the information that we've gathered at the front end. So to some extent, there's a machine gun approach in that respect, but it's a machine gun within the bounds of quite detailed information and a detailed brief, because it's all the funnel, right? You've got to try and find as many people at the top of the funnel, and then based on assessing the grey, which you can do by speaking to these individuals on the phone and asking them questions and qualifying them against the brief, and also against what they're looking for, right? Because this isn't a one-way street. This is a case of what does the client want? That's what we're there to judge. But also, what does the individual want? This isn't a case of, hi, what's your salary? What's your expectations? What's this? What's that? It's actually a case of, what are your drivers? What are your motivations? What are you like as a person? What gets you out of bed in the morning? Like, we're trying to really uncover these intrinsic motivations, because these candidates are just as important as the clients.
100%.
And without them, we wouldn't have a business.
And every placement comes when there's a match. There's a marrying up of wants, needs, and desires from what the candidate wants as well as what the client wants. So why would you not focus on that up front? It's very easy to try and fit a square peg in a round hole, as we say a lot, for candidates that are not looking for that. Or maybe they initially say that the motivator is money, but then it ends up being much more kind of intrinsic around social mission or something like that.
I couldn't agree more. And I think you can't expect to unlock someone's potential by having a shabby brief with the candidate. So we're not just trying to understand the high level details of the candidate. We're also we're not spending 2 hours on a call with a candidate, right? Because the jobs aren't always a match, and we'd rather get to the bottom of that sooner rather than later and keep in touch for the next time. But it's equally important to understand the drivers of them, and to understand and take a proper brief on who they are as a person, because otherwise we're not doing our job on both sides properly.
Exactly. And I think the other part of this is the process of delivery is a constant learning process. Often, like you mentioned earlier, around sometimes clients don't know what they're looking for at the start. Often they do get that clarity after 4 or 5 interviews. It starts to become clear the type of person, experience, background, expertise that they're looking for. Data, tracking. I know this is your favourite topic, Toby.
Can I just say, I love seeing the results of the data.
Yes,
all right. I love seeing the results. I can't even begin to understand how it's all put together, but that's your job.
Because it is my job, and it's amazing how different things have been in terms of our process since we analysed things like how long we'd spent on each task, how long had we spent on each job, what were the different stages, what was involved both in terms of an effort and then admin perspective. And this is probably going to be relevant to anyone in internal HR teams or people teams as well as other recruitment agencies, when you actually look at how much time you waste in that delivery process, it is staggering. So talk us through the game that we came up with.
Yeah, so this is something that I've got to give. I mean, it was kind of a joint project. Yeah. This really, Joey came up with it, and it's been refined to some extent on my side. So the game is, and funnily enough, my flatmate works in HR, and I was telling her this, and she was like, "Why do you keep playing this game with everyone?" She says it in a Canadian accent. I'm not going to try and do that.
You were about to go for that one,
I kind of started in it, but when we speak to candidates, and I think having been, Joey and I have both been in software sales before. So we've both had many conversations with recruiters who've pitched us a variety of different jobs. And by the way, there's some fantastic recruiters out there. So this isn't everyone, but too often I would find that a recruiter would call me They'd arrange a call with me. They'd reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd get on the phone with them, and they would pitch me a job almost straight away. They would have no idea about who I was as a person, what my drivers were, what my motivations were, what my job actually involved. Yes, it was sales exec, but were these transactional £5,000 deals? Were these, multi-stakeholder 9-month deal cycle, 6-figure deals with FTSE 100 companies? They had no idea. They would pitch me a job based on my LinkedIn profile, which really isn't. It gives you a small idea of what I'm like, but that's not the full picture by any means. And that was really frustrating because far too often those calls were completely meaningless, and the jobs
took a long
right.
time, right?
Correct.
I think the biggest thing here is the lesson that candidates in this current market, especially when they are driving it, where they have the pick of the bunch, they don't want to spend half an hour on a call with you just to discover at the end that it's not going to be the right fit either for you or for them, right? So the game is there, or whatever way people want to do it. Try and make those conversations as quick as possible and save candidates time. It's going to make it more attractive. It's going to make it easy to have that conversation.
Yeah, well, I think what you just touched on it, right? They would either go down one route of just pitching me a job without asking me any questions, or they would actually try and remedy that mistake and ask me way too many questions. And I'd be on the phone answering questions for 20 minutes. And at this point, they've still not told me who the company is, and they've still not told me what the role is and any details. And I've not had the chance to ask any questions. So what we've done is we've condensed the most important high-level questions, which are really short, sharp, and punchy. It's 1, 2, 3 word answers or a sentence at most, into a bit of a game, and we're kind of tracking who's the quickest. One person has done 91 seconds. 14 questions in 91 seconds. You know who you are. And it's not been beaten yet. People don't even come close to it, but it's maximum 4 or 5 minutes of answering questions. So we can present the right option. That's the thing. There's lots of options we've got, and we don't want to put what we believe to be the right option in front of you when actually it can be qualified in a really short conversation first.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we'll just move on to behaviours now, something we mentioned at the start, and I specifically want to focus on one area that we've been told that we're quite good at, I'm pretty proud to say, which is having tough conversations. It was really, from the background that I had in sales, working on relatively complex deals with senior stakeholders, one of the biggest skills I developed was typically you build better relationships by not necessarily saying what they want to hear, but what's going to help them. Having tough conversations is something that, from a delivery perspective, especially with candidates, you have frequently. People haven't got through an interview stage or the feedback isn't great. Talk us through how you go about sharing bad feedback.
Yeah, I think it all plays, from my perspective, I find my tough conversations probably easier than you find yours. But I think it comes back to this game, right? And part of when I speak to a candidate, I say, I'm going to ask you a few questions up front and then present you with the right option. But I always caveat that statement with, equally, I might not have something at the moment that's the right fit for you. And I'll let you know why, and I'll let you know if that's the case, and I can give you back the rest of your time. So maximum, you're taking 5 minutes out of your day, and you've got a small benefit, which is you're in touch with me now, and I might be able to reach out to you with the right opportunity based on, that high level brief that I've taken. So I think my mindset with this is, and I'm a bit of a people pleaser. I don't like being bad cop, as you know.
I do know that, yeah.
But I do know that if I put a candidate into a role where I know the client's got a different requirement and it's just not going to work because of that detailed brief, it's the wastage of time. And I think from analysing the data, the wastage of time is the biggest improvement that everyone could make in recruitment.
It's staggering how much we thought we were an efficient machine, didn't we? And we worked out
how naive we were.
Yeah, completely. We worked out that we were actually spending something like 47% of our time on revenue generation activity when we thought we were spending, if you look at a normal working day, a lot more hours than a normal working day. That was really staggering.
Yeah.
But it's amazing what we've changed.
We thought we were working really hard. We were part-timers.
We were working hard, but we weren't working smart.
Yeah.
And I think that I'd really value tough conversations. I think it builds really strong relationships, because if you're having it with a purpose in mind that you want to help, that you want things to improve, it's a great thing. It's not something to cower away from. If again, you mentioned the why, that's critical. As long as you explain that reason why you're having that tough conversation, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something that I think I've seen you do, and I've been somewhat shocked at how well it's received if it's positioned in the right way with the right reasons behind it.
Yeah, when we ask our clients for feedback on us, it's the one point that is repeatedly raised, that they appreciate the fact that we don't tell them what they want to hear. If we kind of go onto looking at candidates now, and the candidate market, obviously really hot market for them in a lot of ways. It's a great time to move because of the salary increases that we're seeing. It's whether it's not going to be sustainable. This can't go on forever, and a big part of the moment is around that recession piece. We're having lots and lots and lots of conversations at the moment around how do I recession plan? What should I do?
Yeah, I think it's obviously hyper relevant in the economic situation that we're in at the moment, and I think due diligence is the answer in sort of two words. And I think too many. If we look at people's LinkedIn profiles, if you see someone's made a couple of moves quite quickly, i.e. within 18 months or even 2 years sometimes, depending on which way you look at it, there's always that question mark. And I think regardless of the economy and the situation we're in, due diligence has got to be such a thorough process when it comes to a candidate assessing if an opportunity is right for them, even more so in this market.
Without a doubt, finding recession-proof companies is at this moment an essential decision criteria that people should be looking for. Where will people start to spend their money if there is a recession? Where will companies start to spend their money if there is a recession? What is the plan that the company that you're looking potentially to be employed by for that recession? What are the financial results that happened during COVID is a really good way of assessing if they have that plan in place or if they're likely to thrive. That needs to be high up on the agenda for candidates moving at the moment, because it is a big risk. I think the other part of this, you alluded to it, was we could share what clients look for in a LinkedIn profile. You mentioned around career decisions and stuff like that. What is it that you typically see if we look at kind of on a macro level? What are clients looking for in a LinkedIn profile? What makes a LinkedIn profile stand out?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and actually this is a conversation I have on a daily basis with candidates, especially if I can't offer them a job. I like to impart some advice, and I think a lot of the time they are quite appreciative of it. A lot of things is the simple answer. Your LinkedIn profile it paints a picture of who you are as a character. So if there's a job title, a company name, no picture, as far as people like you and I are concerned, and people who are looking at your profile with a view to potentially making a hire, you almost don't exist, which is quite sad to say, but it's the same as anything. It's the same as a Facebook profile or Facebook. How old am I?
Yeah, I know, you're getting a bit too old.
A TikTok profile. I don't even know what that looks like.
Soon to be.
Yeah, but no, it does paint a picture of yourself. So I think as far as what they're looking for, there's a few key things. Firstly, progression. Progression's typically shown by moving in any kind of fashion, but typically in a linear fashion, and that's internal promotions, but also external promotions, because you could have been at a company for 10 years, and that's great. That shows loyalty. Some people might say, why didn't you push yourself for a challenge sooner? So progression is one. Another is loyalty and sticking it out. If you have done your due diligence correctly, then a lot of the time, most of the time, you should be with a business for quite some years, for 2+ years, I would say, to show loyalty. Because if you've made the right decision, if you've done your due diligence, then there's no reason why you shouldn't. And you should have assessed career progression within that business. And if you're performing, you should have progressed. So that's where that comes together and that's pieced together. I think education is the next part, which is not necessarily university education, but people look for learners. People want, our clients typically want people who are constantly developing personally and professionally. And that can be in many different forms.
Yeah, exactly. I think that learning point is really key. What are you doing inside work or outside work to demonstrate that you are someone that wants to constantly evolve? Especially, the market we operate in, tech startup scale-ups. It's an environment that is a little bit scrappy, as you would expect, and frequently you're having to learn very, very quickly. That's something that frequently they look at, and also you allude to it, tenure lengths. It's amazing what kind of picture it presents in someone's head. Even if they don't have all the right information, people will create an image in your head of what that person is like, even if it's not true.
Yeah, assumptions are made.
Assumptions are made, exactly. So I'd highly recommend that if there were unfortunate instances, being made redundant, for example, it's not a slam on you as a person. It happens. It's part of the market. Don't be afraid to state that, because it mitigates if you've had a couple of short tenure lengths.
Exactly. I think also it's everyone's, an assumption is made, but the grey is judged in the conversation. I spoke to in fact, we placed a candidate recently who you actually asked me questions. You said, tenure lengths look a little bit dodgy. Yeah. And I remember saying, these are the reasons, really, really clearly stated. The story added up. It made complete sense. You couldn't question it.
Exactly.
So
I think it's one of those ones. People, the short of this is people will make assumptions on your profile based on how it looks. So make it look as good as you can.
Yeah.
Basically. I think the other interesting thing with this, and kind of coming on to the activity that we've started doing over the last couple of months, which is, it's amazing how many people don't know what they want. It's really, really amazing the amount of conversations that we have when we ask them what they're looking for, and they'll give some high level, I'm looking for more money. But when you ask, when have you been happy in work? It's amazing how quickly all of that kind of goes out the window into what is their decision making criteria, and that's a really key thing, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's, we've all been there. I think more people don't know what they want to do than do know what they want to do.
Sure.
And it's the benefit of the world that we live in now, is that there is so much choice.
Yeah.
We don't specialize in a particular subsector of tech for that exact reason, because I think companies are open to people moving into different sectors. If you understand how to sell a complex SaaS product or a complex technology, then who's to say you can't learn a new industry pretty quickly and get up to speed with that existing skill set?
And when you start to define what it is that you're looking for, the pool of companies that will be an option as an employer really does narrow. It becomes a lot simpler to work out if it's going to be the right career move for you. Especially anyone that's had a couple of jumps in the last 2, really recommend you get a fixed decision-making criteria and really ask yourself, pose yourself some questions on what is it that I actually want, rather than what is it that everyone around me is doing and I kind of like the look of.
And I think that's actually the key thing, Joe, is people don't ask themselves those questions. And there's so many people that you speak to who reveal things about themselves that they didn't really seem to know before. And I think too, especially if you're passively looking, where you'll have a look at an in-mail coming in on LinkedIn, but you're not actively going, I wonder what this is. Yeah. You realise that you don't really understand what you're looking for, because you're kind of assessing option by option, as opposed to looking within yourself and going, what makes me tick? What do I enjoy about this job? What don't I like so much? Outside of work, what do I do? And how can I find alignment so that, the money's right, the progression's right, but also actually get out of bed in the morning thinking I'm really excited to go to work and make an impact.
And often it does require help to so drop me a message. And
You're plugging yourself.
I'll plug myself there, and I'll make you doubt everything about your career, your career choices. Yeah. But we'll come to. I've had a brilliant example today. I won't go through it, but we've spent, me and this person, a couple hours now, probably maybe three and a bit hours, purely going through what does happy at work look like. What started versus where we're at now are polar opposites, and that clarity has resulted in we have a list of companies that we're going to target together. So it is possible. You just need to, and if you can't ask yourself the questions, do come to us. Like that's kind of why we do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes someone who doesn't have the noise in your head to help you get that clarity that you need to make that career move. But final section now, Tobes.
Yes.
The Founder Project.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
The Founder Project.
Who came up with that?
Me. Yeah, I think so. We are now 1 year old.
We are.
And we're now in a position, thankfully, where we put the hard work in to cement ourselves as a business that survived, I think it's fair to say. And we're looking to grow. So we have created a scheme that, interestingly, has come from one of my darkest moments.
This is good.
One of my darkest moments in life. And I'm going to tell a little story here around, from the age of 14 or so, I've been obsessed with business, with making money, with progressing. And for about 12 years, I did not know that pretty much all of my actions were being guided by ego, which sounds really odd that it's it. But essentially, I went.
I can definitely vouch for that.
You can. I've been someone that's every time I set myself a goal, I hit that goal, I reach that destination, and happy, sad, new goal, love the process, reach it, sad, and amazingly, it took me going to America to pursue a new business idea, which was going to be all around scale, unicorn type idea, and being alone on the other side of the world for a long period of time, where your phone wasn't buzzing. People weren't texting me; they were all asleep.
This is when I thought I was going to lose Joe.
He did. I nearly left Placebo in the pursuit of greatness. And what was amazing about a 4-day meltdown that I had, I walked about 60 miles around San Francisco in 4 days, was I started to pose myself the question of what actually makes me happy. Like it's a bit like what I spoke earlier around the candidate piece. What actually makes me happy? What are the things that give me a true sense of joy rather than what I perceive joy is, i.e. money, status, power. And what I discovered was that I'm happiest when I help other people, when I see other people succeed and I've had a hand in helping them. And that's not necessarily helping everyone on a grand scale, but those one-on-one connections that you build with people. So the other part of that is, of course, entrepreneurship. The things that Toby's been obsessed with starting a business since you got into recruitment, pretty much. You've always said that you want to do it, you want to go at it alone.
Yeah.
And that was something that, again, I had a passion for. So the Founder Project, essentially, with that context in mind, is a pioneering scheme where we will employ people for 3 years for a structured 3-year training program, which will be designed to build all the skills, all the attitudes, all the behaviors that you need to be a successful founder. I have started a business, I have failed a business miserably, and I know how bad that is, and I know exactly what I needed to do this time.
So talk me through, you said a structured 3-year program. What's structured about it?
Essentially, when you look at
and why?
Well, I'll start with why. When you look at Gen Z, when you look at a millennial, really, you want a plan. You want to know where you're going to be at some point in time. You don't want this wishy-washy, in 3 years you're going to be a business owner. How am I going to get there? That's really, really important for young people. If you look at academics and education, you're spoon-fed. You're told this is what you're going to learn. This is the chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, do your exam pass. When you enter the world of work, it's a completely different ballgame, is the truth. You don't have someone that's holding your hand and guiding you. You need to work out how to do it yourself. So this ultimately comes down to behaviors for me. So the 3-year plan will essentially be, from a financial perspective, people will start on £30,000. Every 6 months, there'll be a £5,000 pay increase. Of course, there will be monthly reviews into the performance and that kind of stuff. The first year, essentially, you'll be working on business development. So you'll be learning the trade. You'll be building empathy for how difficult a job a lot of the admin tasks is. Something that I think is very important that everyone gets used to doing. Year 2, you'll become an account manager. So this is when you're going to start to actually do recruitment. You'll start having the conversations like you do. You'll learn how to sell. You'll learn how to take a brief. You'll learn how to do all those things that involve listening more than anything. You'll also, in that year, you're going to become a manager. The interesting thing about you're not ever taught how to manage people. It's something that often people get chucked into, or they have the support of the working environment. As a founder, you kind of manage everyone. It's your little baby, isn't it? So you're also going to control a budget. I spoke about cash flow in the Get to Know Me podcast. For anyone that isn't aware what that is the single most important document you're going to have as a business owner. And making decisions based on profit rather than cost. Long story short of this, anyone that's interested in this, just hit me up. We'll have a conversation. I'll go through this at length. I'll show you the plan and what it actually looks like. But for anyone listening, we understand that developing into a founder is not something that you can be taught in school. It's something that's applied learning. And it's amazing how good a vehicle recruitment is to teach you those lessons. Because as a recruiter, you do everything. You do everything from your own finances to your sales, to your operation, to your strategy, to your delivery, to your marketing.
I couldn't agree more. And I think what's really interesting about this project is, if you look at the two of us, we have such a different skill set.
Yeah.
But this project covers every single part of this. And when I was younger, if I had something similar to this, where I was taught the cash flow, where I became a bit of a spreadsheet geek.
So you're calling me, Ted?
But also when I was nurtured through the softer side, through the conversations, through what questions to ask, through understanding when to stop and pause. If I had that rounded skill set, like you say, recruitment it's a vehicle for potentially another business, potentially recruitment, but it's a really great way to understand how a business runs.
And I think exactly that. And the bit that probably everyone, why is this called the Founder Project if you're employed? Because after 3 years, you are told to leave. You have built the skills. You will be equipped to be successful. But you will have a 6-month period where you work in an incubator. You'll receive funding from us directly to help you get going, as well as the safety blanket of knowing that you and I, as well as any other investors that want to come on, are going to be behind them, supporting them in a safe environment. But they'll be equipped with the skills to do it successfully, unlike I was when I first started. And the people that are going to be best, who hopefully they'll be most receptive, is anyone with entrepreneurial spirit, anyone who wants to give it a go themselves, who has that kind of difference in attitude and opinion, where they want to push themselves and ultimately learn how to do this successfully. Because I've been there and I've failed, and it's not nice, but it was a great learning experience. We want to create that exact learning experience, but in a safe environment.
Yeah, I think it's really unique as well, and I think, like you say, for young people who've been in such a structured life up until now, it is scary going into the professional world, because you're chucked in the deep end, right? And to have a really clear plan, and to know that, in month 1, this is where you're going to be, in month 6, this is where you're going to be, and actually 3 years, in the grand scheme of things, that's a really short period of time. Graduates coming out at 21, 22, 23, in 3 years, they're only going to be slightly over, around about the age of 25. But the learning within that period is what's going to really prepare them for whatever their future is as a founder.
Without a doubt, learning is the big thing here. I think the important point to raise on this is that the intention to teach you from you and I is there for the right reasons, not the wrong reasons. Coming back to the story I told at the start, doing this because I love doing it, doing because you love doing it. It's not because we're trying to build some billion-pound empire. It's because we genuinely love this initial part of the process of educating. And I think if you separate the two into your 3 years employed and then the 2 years of structured support post that, your 3 years employed, you have clarity on where you'll be in your career. You'll have clarity on the lessons you can learn and how you're going to learn them. You're going to have clarity on your pay. You're also going to be on a commission model, which probably means you're going to earn a lot more than people at your current point in your career. So from an employment perspective, it's brilliant. On top of that, there's things like optional education. Of course, people that want to start tech businesses need to know how to code. We'll support you in obtaining that education. Self-development budget of £200 per month. Spend it on the gym for all we like. It's whatever you need to do to make yourself in that physical or mental headspace that is right for you. And then giving back, something that we really care about at the same time, is having a day a month to do what you want to do to help the world. We're blessed to be in the position that we are, and we want to give people time to contribute to the causes that they care about. So from an employment perspective, it has everything that most employers give you, and hopefully a little bit more.
Yeah. And can you talk me through, what do you think is, having started 2 businesses, having worked in a large company and done a little bit in between, what do you think is the benefit of joining a small, growing, ambitious business compared to a larger, more established company?
You have a voice. That's a very easy question to answer, in my opinion. It's very easy to be a small cog in a big machine. In a small company, it is scrappy. You don't have those massively defined processes, but that also means you're more agile. It means that when new great ideas come up, you go and implement them very, very quickly. And in a small company, your voice matters, your opinion matters. And the real beauty of anyone who is leaving school, who might be applicable with this, leaving university or in an early stage of their career, you do not bear the scars that people that have more experience. I'm only 26, but I feel like I bear a lot of scars from when I failed my own business and when I worked in a corporate. Those fresh ideas are what keeps businesses going, and that voice that you have is the big thing for me.
I think for me, to answer my own question, I think in a small business, you learn such a broader base of skills. And that's so important when you're young and you're unsure of what you want to do, because getting exposure to all different parts of that business, understanding what a cash flow looks like, understanding what a sales, even just, the simple things like a sales script for an email, a sales script for a call, how to run a meeting, how to set an agenda for a meeting, how to negotiate a deal. You're getting experience from everything from start to finish. Some of those things you're going to really love and others you're not. But in larger companies, I think whilst there's so many benefits to working for larger companies, it is naturally far more segmented. And that's the nature of larger businesses. And you can become an expert in something, quite narrow, which is fantastic in some ways. But I think personally, and in my experience from when I was young, was getting a taste for everything allowed me to understand, I don't really like that so much, but that's really cool. That's really interesting. Actually, I'm quite good at that. So let me focus in and hone in on what I'm really good at.
Exactly that. And we talk a lot about founder mindset versus employee mindset. We want people to come here and think for themselves. We want people to be autonomous. We want people to fail and encourage that environment where it's okay to fail and learn from that. And I think we've spoken about them as an employee, but let's not forget this is the founder project. We want them to start a business. It's all built so that they can be successful at that. But then that next 2 years is when they get to show what they've learned. They get to do their own thing and become their own kind of success, I suppose. And I can honestly say, if you just kind of close off here, is I'm so excited the prospects of bringing people in who want to learn, because I'm confident that we can build an environment that facilitates some very, very successful people in the future.
Couldn't agree more, Joe.
It's been a pleasure, James.
It's been a good one.
First time on camera.
Yeah, you look lovely.
I feel pretty hot. Cool, thanks, Tobes.